OPEC, the de facto leader of Saudi Arabia, has turned down a request from President Biden to delay its oil cut decision. This has prompted Republicans to raise concerns that the administration's energy policy is more about politics and not about Americans' wallets. Joining us now, Louisiana Senator Bill Cassidy is here with us this morning. He serves on the Energy Committee. When they made Casablanca, little did they know that we would be using that expression forever. Oh, my God, there's politics going on here. Of course there is, Senator. Of course, and it goes on both sides. And the American people watch this and, you know, probably don't like it very often, but we all know it's just par for the course. Of course he didn't want a production cut before the elections. But, it's, you know, you're trying to do your best for the American people, too. You don't want higher oil prices.
There would be more to that if they actually just hadn't said, oh, Saudi Arabia, don't cut prices until just after the election.
Wait till November 10th. Yeah, that's a little...
It's an incredible combination.
But Republicans would do the same thing in
well,
some
no,
other context.
You know what Republicans would have done?
Tell me.
What we would not have done is that the first week after a Republican president took office, we wouldn't have done what Biden did, which is to kill the Keystone XL pipeline. Okay. That would have been 800,000 barrels a day, a pipeline that would have been completed by now, coming from Canada to the Gulf Coast to be refined for distribution across the United States.
What about the notion that that oil companies have nothing to drill on? And we had a big discussion yesterday with someone off the camera. But so federal leases are down at the lowest level in 50 years. How much do the oil companies need to drill on federal versus private lands?
So the privates are doing their job. If you look at the rig count in the private sector, it's up 50 or even more than 50% relative to a year ago. Okay. On the other hand, in the outer continental shelf of Louisiana, which is federal, there were, I'm told by a reliable source, that there were permits applied to drill off an existing platform in January, and that if they had been granted, within 6 months there would have been oil and gas production coming to the shore to be refined. Now, that was in January. Do the math. Even if it wasn't 6 months, it was 9 months. We still would be having an increased supply available now. At every point, the Biden administration has done their best to shut down North American energy production, and now they're like, oh my gosh, we got to blame the Saudis.
But oil companies didn't have workers. Oil companies went through a slowdown. There were a lot of fracking companies went out of business because of prices. There were a lot of other things that happened. We're not back to 2019 levels, but we're supposed to be there next year. So there has been a slow rebound in oil production.
Everything you just said, but in the private sector, the rig count is up 50% year over year. And again, recall what I was told by somebody who is in charge of these operations. If we get our permits, within 6 months, we'll be producing oil and gas.
I'm just trying to play devil's advocate. I saw the
glad you're doing it.
I saw the executive orders on January 20th, 2021, that basically spelled out what Joe Biden said during the campaign. I will put an end to the fossil fuel industry. What I don't understand is when the excrement hits the air conditioner over in Europe, suddenly the left is going, we didn't want to cut production. No, who, us? We didn't want to. We weren't. But that was your stated, not you, but that was the stated intention of what he was going to do.
Look, I don't like the politics of what's happening with Saudi right now, but let me say this. The flip side is we all want lower gasoline prices.
Right.
The question is, when do you think you want lower gasoline prices, not higher gasoline prices? You'd want to push the higher gasoline prices off as much as you possibly could, right?
And you'd want to do the SPR is the same discussion. We want to help Americans but then again, we want some SPR left for a bad...
Well, for better or worse, there happens to be an election here in the middle of it, but like you can't change the date.
I said that. I said that. I said, okay.
But SPR production is essentially opening up another oil well. And so the fact that we're draining it tells us that they think supply is important and that domestic supply is important. They would rather just take it from that which has already been produced as opposed to creating new American jobs and new Canadian jobs, North American jobs, by allowing the Keystone XL to be built or to allow drilling off the coast of Louisiana. By the way, one of our problems in this economy is how do we help that kind of non-college educated but hardworking person who's going to show up every day, get a job which pays his or her bills, which sends their kids to a better school, which changes the trajectory of that family. Those oil and gas jobs do that. You work on a rig, 30 days on, 30 days off, think about that, a month out, a month in, you can make $100,000 a year. Now, I can tell you, that changes the trajectory of a family. And this administration is doing their best to kill those jobs.
I got nothing. I can't argue. You're going to have to take over because I disagree. I do agree with some of that, Andrew. So you're going to have to take over and push back.
You want me to push back? I mean, you know what the pushback is.
No, I know. We can move on. I was kidding. We can move on to other subjects like inflation, like what the Fed is doing. I mean, we've been talking about should you approach this in some kind of supply side way, or is there something else that can be done? The supply side.
About energy or inflation?
No, everything.
Well, it's all related.
It's all related.
It's all related.
Yeah.
I think first. It is two sides. It is supply side. Clearly, the high cost of fuel is driving up the cost of everything else.
Right.
Number one. But number two, people are criticizing Liz Truss and the Bank of England for simultaneously pursuing both a stimulatory policy and a let's raise interest rate policy. Right. That's what this administration has done.
On the other side, yeah.
On the other side, the Inflation Reduction Act, the canceling of student loans, the American Relief Package, Rescue Package, is a stimulatory policy working at direct odds to raising interest rates. And if you look at the American Rescue Plan, American real wages have fallen every month since.
2 years.
This is not an American Rescue Plan. This is an American hit job. If you're talking about the salary, the effective salary.
Okay, so what's your position on what Liz Truss is doing?
So Truss has an issue of where they've got declining productivity, and they are falling behind other G7 nations. I am told that they are the only G7 nation whose economy is smaller now post-COVID than it was pre-COVID. So I don't have special insight, but I do know what they're doing is what we did in our tax reform bill when Republicans controlled things, which is to allow basically immediate or one-year expensing of capital investment. Now, that can increase productivity. It increases productivity, which means that you now have more money to pay higher wages. There's a lot of good economy in there.
The point's been made that our debt to GDP is quite a bit worse than the UK's, but and this was a small addition. The way it was received, a lot of people say that mistakes from the Bank of England prior to Liz Truss even being there are what set this up with, defined benefit plans, not being able to match liabilities for all the pensions, and that's the way it happened. But we have a strong dollar here, and we can handle probably a higher debt ratio, but does that make it a good thing? We're layering on more spending. We're not cutting taxes, but as you said, we did the same stimulatory stuff just from the other side of the ledger.
It's a schizophrenic economic policy, and the American people are paying the price for the mental illness of this administration. It's better.
You got to say something to that. You can't let him get away with that. I'm not going to because like I said, but you got to push back on that. Did you hear what he just said?
I did hear what he just said.
That's just he's throwing it down.
I'm not going to win.
You're exhausted.
I'm exhausted with the debate. We got to go because we got a whole bunch of earnings reports.
We have Senator Warren on. We do the same stuff. Anybody can come here and say things like that. Some people are going to complain. They complain when you do, and then when we have Senator Warren.
And that's what makes that's what makes a market.
That's what makes a debate.
And that's what makes this a good show, by the way. So thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Good to have you on.